Mike?
Yeah, you believe in living together before you're married?
Lord, I don't even believe in living together after you're married.
There she is, the legend Dolly Parton. Gone, but never forgotten, a huge loss for all of us. Welcome to today's episode of Stand Up. I am Pete Dominick. Thank you very much for being here today. I have a great guest joining for you today, the very in-demand Gil Duran, the journalist covering the tech billionaires better than anybody else, tells us the story of exactly what's happening. You're not going to want to miss that conversation. It begins at about 35 minutes in. But first, I've got your headlines and your clips, and there's a lot to get to, so I'm going to get to it right now. But I can't do it without your support. Thank you very much for signing up for a paid subscription on Patreon at Pete Dominick or Substack at StandUpWithPete. And thank you to Ronnie, who says, congratulations on your transition to video. Looking great. Thanks, Ron. Thanks, everybody, for watching and for being here and for subscribing on YouTube or wherever you're watching. Let's get to it right now. I've got your headlines and your clips, starting, of course, with the death, the loss of the legend Dolly Parton. I think you got to start there. Everybody is mourning her loss and remembering her today. She was one of the finest Americans ever to live, one of the most generous, a role model, and an amazing fighter, a part of the resistance too. I think it's fair to say, known for so many things. You've seen her, I'm sure, remembered all over the place. And I'll play maybe some more clips coming up in the clip show. But of course, I think that's probably the top story. Also last night was the South Carolina primary where Lindsey Graham's sister, Darlene Graham, who had been filling the seat, was actually nominated by 130,000 Republican voters in South Carolina, likely to win the Republican Senate in November, and she only beat out her opponent, Ralph Norman, by a few percentage points. And when Ralph Norman, the far-right Republican who was challenging her for the seat, of course, speech last night, apparently he was booed when he mentioned Trump's name. So Trump was booed at a Republican primary in South Carolina. So I guess I like to see that. And Darlene Graham will now be a senator likely because of 130,000 people in South Carolina, wildly unqualified for the seat, as I think you probably heard. The big news yesterday morning is that Canada has retaliated with new U.S. tariffs. Yesterday morning, Canada announced retaliatory tariffs as high as 50% on hundreds of American products. The biggest blow, double duties on steel and aluminum, which we desperately need from Canada. Yesterday, our commander-in-chief apparently posted, "We don't need Canada," and then shortly after it said, "We desperately need Canada's aluminum." So anyway, the catalog of affected goods is huge. Includes railway locomotives, smartphones, dishwashers, a variety of fish, frozen and fresh. You can read the full list at a number of news outlets. Over the weekend, trade talks between the two countries collapsed, and President Assolini claimed Canada had mistreated the U.S., imposed a 50% tariff on some imports, and he invoked this little-known 1930 law that a lot of lawyers are calling obsolete. The legal fuzziness, says the New York Times, means the Trump administration may soon have to defend it again in court. Of course, this is an ongoing saga and probably one of the more pathetic things, but who could possibly decide out of this administration? All right, 2 people have died of measles in Pennsylvania. The state's health department has confirmed this. Both people were, guess what, unvaccinated. They are the first such deaths in the U.S. this year and the first in Pennsylvania in 35 years. Lots to say about that. Some clips coming up for you on it as well. Lawyers for the Trump administration told a federal judge that the Kennedy Center may soon have to be demolished if the president is not allowed to renovate it. If he can't remake it in his own name, they're going to destroy it. Come on. They're not going to take down the Kennedy Center and remake it, are they? Please don't let them do that. The head of the CIA, John Ratcliffe, is in Russia. We don't know why he's there, and we only know he was there because someone tracked his plane, which is publicly information, to Moscow. So I don't know. Maybe he's telling Putin not to start World War III. Not sure. The administration also is making it harder for communities to weigh in on proposed data centers. How about this? The regime moving to make it harder for communities to weigh in on proposed data centers, even as a backlash against the behemoth projects grow across the country. The Environmental Protection Agency plans to eliminate a federal requirement that states publicize and solicit public input on applications for an air pollution permits for a range of industrial facilities, including new data centers and the power plants needed to run them. The move could prevent residents from raising concerns about or even learning about data centers before permits and construction starts. Nearly 200 advocacy groups in more than a dozen states have voiced opposition to the change, making it the latest flashpoint in the national debate over the data centers powering the artificial intelligence boom. So there's that really important big story that's going undercover in my mind. This year's El Nino event could be the strongest in centuries. I talked with Michael Mann about that. I'll get that interview up later today or tomorrow, but you can watch it right now on Substack at Stand Up with Pete, and I believe it should be up at YouTube as well. Yesterday, we had more insane moves from our insane president. He threatened to rename Lake Ontario Lake America. Yeah, Canadians didn't much like that. He urged South Carolinian Republicans to vote for Darlene Graham in a special Senate runoff, telling voters, pretend, please, that I'm on the ballot. Well, I guess they did because you heard the results. A federal judge rejected Ghislaine Maxwell's effort to overturn her 2021 sex trafficking conviction and a 20-year prison sentence, so I guess that's good. In the Middle East, Palestinian residents of war-battered Gaza fled homes and businesses as Israeli strikes and tank fire killed at least 4 people on Monday, including 2 children, a week after a U.S. delegation asked Israeli to draw down attacks. After evacuation warnings by Israel's military, a strike hit a building in a refugee camp in central Gaza. Oof, just horrible. Let's see. A federal judge in Massachusetts found the Trump administration violated her order that barred the government from moving forward with certain restrictions on mail-in voting. Yet even though she did not impose a remedy for that violation, the U.S. district judge said it may ultimately benefit the voting rights plaintiffs who brought the case because the violative government action makes it ripe to sue over arguably one of the most important ongoing legal disputes. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that. You can look it up. The federal judge's name is Judge Indira Talwani. And, of course, Tuesday's ruling comes after the Supreme Court's ruling in a separate but related case. The British Prime Minister Andy Burnham said Monday that the UK will help Ukraine make its own long-range missiles by sharing classified technical information for British components. That's an interesting development. News story, I think this is at the New York Times. Farmers who overwhelmingly back Trump are now warning they are in the worst financial crisis since 1980. Do they deserve it? I don't know. Are they going to change the way that they vote and think? I doubt it, but I thought that was an interesting development and headline to share. Also, this one, ICE arrests jumped nearly 50,000 in July, the highest monthly total for our commander-in-chief's second national nightmare term. Reuters is reporting that a U.S. judge has blocked an Ohio law requiring residents to present documentary proof of citizenship when registering to vote at the state's DMV offices. The latest setback for Trump and his allies. His handpicked U.S. attorney, Jeanine Pirro, actually screwed up again. That's right. She's the district attorney for the District of Columbia, and she messed up the prosecution of 2 accused MS-13 gang leaders earlier this year, apparently. CNN's reporting that she failed to get a jury to convict a guy who is accused of ordering murders on U.S. soil from a Salvadorian jail more than 10 years ago, or his co-defendant, who is reportedly a local MS-13 leader in D.C., couldn't do it. She failed again. And this is one of the more pathetic headlines. The administration's fixation on wall art at government facilities over the last 20 months is a story unto itself. Listen to this. The State Department wants to sell a painting by a celebrated artist named Kehinde Wiley that the director of its art embassies program called, quote, very woke and aesthetically terrifying. It was removed from the U.S. Embassy in the Dominican Republic last week. State Department officials removed the painting from the embassy last week after first hiding it behind a tarp designed with an image of an American flag. It's a great painting, and they don't like it because it depicts a non-traditional family. I think it's fair to say. All right. Well, those are the headlines that I've gathered for you today. Now it's time to get to the clip show. What clips do I have for you? You're about to find out. There are some good ones. Let's start with some more amazing moments from Dolly Parton. I don't know who put together this montage, but I'm going to play a few of these great clips.
Number one, Dolly Parton pet peeve.
Nobody notices I've got a great ass, too. You ever wish you were born a guy? Do I ever wish I was born a guy? Lord, no, I've always been a sissy. And if I'd have been born a man, I'd have been a drag queen.
First thing you do when you get out of bed in the morning?
I usually get up, put on my clothes, and go home.
Okay, I'm asking you a question on behalf of myself and my school. I'm an editor of my school newspaper in Simi Valley.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, if you could tell teenagers of America today one thing, whether it be advice or something of support, what would it be?
I would say, act like it's raining every day and wear your rubbers. I saw an ad the other day that said, you too can look like Dolly Parton for only $500. Boy, I wish I'd have seen that ad before I dished out the millions it cost me to look like Dolly Parton.
All right, just a few great moments from Dolly Parton to get us started before we get to all these much more upsetting and depressing clips, including the news right now about, well, actually, you know what? Let me play this from her nephew. In case you didn't see it, this was the official statement from Dolly Parton's family.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian Seaver, son of Cassie Parton, and I'm representing the Parton and Owens family today, announcing the passing of my Aunt Dolly Rebecca Parton Dean, sister, sis, Aunt Granny to one generation and Gigi to the next. This video announcement is something Dolly asked of me years ago, before I fully absorbed it as a future reality. As her head of security for more than 2 decades, a role my father Larry held before me, I have imagined the heaviness of this moment, but haven't truly felt it until now. It is an honor that is mixed with absolute pride and great sadness. But sadness lies with us, not with Dolly. Dolly has lived in the light and is in the arms of Jesus, surely met by Carl, her parents, and countless others who have watched her and longed for her to meet them in the heavens. I first went on the road with Dolly as a kid, getting a taste of the road life in the early 1980s. Dolly opened doors not just for me, but for her entire family to reach the potential we didn't even know was possible. Dolly also opened doors for generations of singers, songwriters, musicians, and dreamers from every walk of life and across every continent. By her example, we believed that anything was possible. She never saw a door she couldn't open, and the doors she opened made and changed history. My family and I have shared a lifetime of beautiful memories with Dolly, but so have you. She has always been on your television, your record player, your CD, and on your phone playlist, becoming an extended part of your family, whether you liked it or not. Our family and the team she has entrusted with her legacy will work diligently to ensure her spirit will live with us forever. Dolly was a farmer, just like her daddy. He farmed the soil. She farmed songs and happiness. Dolly called me and said she wants to rest in a beautiful bed of plush cotton because after a life wearing heavy rhinestones, she finally deserves to be comfortable and have some rest. Rest in peace, Aunt Dolly, Aunt Granny, Gigi. May God bless Dolly Parton, and may God bless you all. She will always love you.
That's right. She wrote that song for Whitney Houston, right? What do I know? Now let's get to something not so great. It's the death of 2 people as a result of measles. Here is the governor of Pennsylvania and a potential presidential candidate, Josh Shapiro, dealing with this announcement.
I'm here at Lancaster General today to provide an update on the ongoing measles outbreak across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is a serious and a growing problem across the country and right here in our Commonwealth. So far this year, there have been 393 confirmed cases of measles in Pennsylvania. That is the highest number of measles cases since 1992. Nearly 20% of those cases have resulted in someone being hospitalized. It's important to note that every single one of those cases was someone who is not fully vaccinated. And just this morning, the Pennsylvania Department of Health announced the first 2 measles-associated deaths in Pennsylvania in 35 years. Both of the individuals were from Lancaster County, and both were unvaccinated. We hope and we pray that those deaths will be the last. I want to be clear. This illness and death from measles is completely preventable. We already have the tools to protect ourselves and our families from this disease, which is one of the most contagious diseases on the face of the earth. I want to explain for a moment just how contagious measles is and what we can do to protect ourselves. Let's start with how you contract measles. Measles is an airborne virus, which means you can catch measles just from being in the same room as someone who already has it. Let me give you an example. If someone with measles walks into a room with 100 people in it, none of whom are vaccinated, 90 of those people are at high risk of walking out with measles. If that same individual with measles walks into a room of 100 people who are fully vaccinated, the only person walking out of that room with measles is the person who walked in with it.
Well, that certainly says a lot about it. And I thought that was some pretty expert communication by the governor of Pennsylvania. Let's check with our friend, Dr. Rob Davidson from the Committee to Protect Healthcare, who often joins me here on the show. Always a real smart guy. I want to get his take, see if it has anything to add.
Incredibly sad news out of Pennsylvania. 2 measles deaths being reported, the first in 35 years in Pennsylvania. Hey, Dr. Rob Davidson here. Check us out on Paging America, on YouTube, and on Substack. Listen, these are preventable deaths. The ultimate in preventable deaths. These were unvaccinated individuals. The measles vaccine is highly effective. And if 95% of the population or more is vaccinated against measles, it doesn't show up. It's eradicated. And we dip below those numbers, and in some places significantly below. And listen, I feel sorry, definitely for the people who have died, for the families, but for the parents who don't get their kids vaccinated because they have fallen victim to disinformation and misinformation. And we have a president who just 3 weeks ago sat in the Oval Office issuing an executive order saying the MMR vaccine is lethal, telling them to split it up, even though that's not possible, that it isn't split up, and that's not going to be possible for over a decade. We have Heidi Overton. Dr. Heidi Overton now is the nominee for the FDA commissioner, sat in that Oval Office spewing misinformation and disinformation. People like Callie Means and his sister Casey Means, who was the Surgeon General nominee. Luckily, she did not go through. And then RFK Jr. built a career spreading anti-vax disinformation, fueling the mass outbreak of measles in this country right now. And now 2 deaths again in Pennsylvania. Incredibly sad. Folks, get your kids vaccinated. Stay up to date yourself. We got to push back against these Maha influencer, wellness influencers who are making millions off of people and spreading disinformation and leading to unnecessary deaths like we're now seeing reported in Pennsylvania today. Stay safe, y'all.
Well, there you go. Dr. Rob Davidson, always great to hear from him. And yeah, just a tragic, unnecessary loss and really, really terrible and gross. All right. What else do I have for you? How about the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford, who yesterday called Trump, 2 days ago, called him a loser. Yesterday he was on CNN with Wolf Blitzer, and I wanted to share that clip with you.
But as you know, President Trump this morning is also taking new shots against Canada on his social media platform. Truth Socially posted, and I'm quoting him now, "The United States is giving serious consideration to changing the name of Lake Ontario to Lake America, in that we don't expect to be doing much business with Ontario any longer." And moments ago, he even offered artwork showing the name change. How do you respond to that? And President Trump saying that the U.S. won't be doing much more business with the Ontario province that you represent?
Well, I think it's a lot of rhetoric because we're the number one customer to 17 states, number 2 to 12 others, Ontario alone. If Ontario was just standalone, would be the 3rd largest trading partner in the world. Canada is the number 1 customer, and we buy a tremendous amount of goods off Americans. 9 million Americans wake up every single morning to produce a product, a widget, or a service for Ontario. But, we're strong believers in being a sovereign country. And when President Trump wants to attack our sovereignty and attack our businesses and people in Ontario, I can't roll over. My job is to protect Ontario and Canada, and ironically, protecting the American people. President Trump ran on, lowering the cost of goods. Everything's gone up, from homes to fuel. He ran on creating more jobs. Actually, job numbers went down last month, while Ontario gained 52,000 jobs, more than the entire U.S. combined. We have a resilient economy here. We're going to keep going. We're going to continue diversifying the trade. But I feel terrible for the people in the U.S. I always say I love the U.S. I love the American people. But, states like Michigan and Ohio and Texas and Kentucky, the auto states that are manufacturing autos, it's cost the American people and the auto companies $110 billion on these tariffs. We're the number one purchaser of autos off America anywhere in the world, 400% more than anyone. And what's happening now, we're seeing a decrease in Canadians buying American vehicles, which is going to hurt the auto workers. We're the number one customer for steel and aluminum. That's going to hurt the American people. But I feel that we need to get back to the table and build as I always say, Fortress North America. We're stronger working together rather than attacking each other. It just it doesn't make sense.
Of course it doesn't make sense. Well said by Doug Ford, who did not seem as angry. Did someone tell him to tone it down? Did anybody tell him maybe he shouldn't call Trump a loser? I don't know. Satisfying. We all loved it, of course. And here now is also the Minister of Industry in Canada. I think it's like the Commerce Secretary. It's Melanie Joly, who was asked during the press conference about that renaming of Lake Ontario.
You said President Trump said he's seriously considering renaming Lake Ontario, Lake America. Okay, sorry. Is there anything you can do to stop that, and where do you think his head is at?
We'll always call it Lake Ontario. Period. We're proud of our Great Lakes. We've navigated the, St. Lawrence River, the Great Lakes, for thousands of years. And it was part of a foundation of our country. And we'll just stand up for what we have. And meanwhile, I really think that while all these shenanigans are happening, we'll just be smart. And we'll be strategic, and we'll fight back.
Well, there you go. That's how the Canadians are handling it, at least for today. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Heartbreaking interview over on ABC. George Stephanopoulos sat down with the family, the parents, I believe, and sister of Alex Preddy, who, of course, was murdered by ICE in Minnesota earlier this year. And I thought I would share a little bit of their humanity with you here.
We want justice. We want accountability. He was a good man, cared deeply about his community. He wanted people to be treated fairly, no matter what walk of life. The day he was murdered, he was not at a protest. He was an observer. That's our son, and they killed him. No one called us. No one.
We still haven't heard from him.
Yeah, that's how we found out. Watching it on TV, watching our son be shot 10 times in the back.
Trying to help someone.
Trying to help somebody.
Trying to help someone. My shock is that he was murdered, and no one has given us the complete truth, or anyone has been held accountable. And it's been 7 months.
There was more effort in vilifying him than pursuing justice.
Said it looked like Preddy wanted to do maximum damage and massacre law enforcement. Claimed Preddy committed an act of domestic terrorism. Posted that Preddy was an assassin.
Disgusting. Some of those posts are still up.
Yes, we still hear those words about our child. What did he do to deserve to be murdered? To left cold, on the ground, dead? My child. What did he do?
ABC News asked the White House if President Trump and Stephen Miller still stand by what they said about Alex Preddy. They did not answer the question.
I know that they say they've been doing an investigation. We don't know where it stands. They at least have the right to know who shot Alex Preddy. They have the right to be informed.
There are 2 shooters. They need to be held accountable. Why do they get to just go about their everyday business?
I want their names to be released.
People need to be held responsible when they murder people in this country.
Absolutely heart-wrenching, and we all certainly hope that family gets justice someday, maybe with a different administration. I thought this was interesting from the Midas Network. They have a show called the Valor Media Network, which deals, I think, with military veterans issues. And they were talking on the show about Dory Miller, the World War II hero from Pearl Harbor who manned that gun, who on an aircraft during the attack, of course, who was going to be having an aircraft carrier named after him until they decided to replace his name with Trump. Anyway, I thought it was interesting to hear a retired black veteran naval commander weigh in on this. Here it is.
It was quite remarkable for a man who, number one, was never trained to do it, and number two, should have been looking out and trying to protect himself in all of the chaos. What's even more remarkable is you would think an action like that would garner the Medal of Honor. The actions of Dory Miller that day easily should have warranted him the Medal of Honor. Why was he not awarded that, you may ask? I'll give you one guess. He was a black man. There were 15 Medal of Honors given for actions at Pearl Harbor, but not one given to a black sailor. As a matter of fact, right after the attack, the accounts of who did it were almost lost because they just named an unnamed Negro. It took the NAACP to dig into it to actually find out who the person was. And Chester Nimitz himself, the fleet admiral, the new fleet admiral, awarded Dory Miller his Navy Cross. It's interesting. In 1997, the United States Army went back and took a look at all of the possible Medal of Honor winners who were black that were not awarded it solely due to their skin color. And they went back and gave them their Medals of Honor. It was 7 total. The Navy has never done that. Never done it.
Wow. Really interesting. So glad I grabbed that one and shared it with you. Also thought this was great. Qasim Rashid, who I used to have on the show all the time, and I got to invite back. He was on that dumb Piers Morgan show, and he addressed the claim that America was built by, quote, hardworking people, but reminded everybody that America was actually built on the backs of enslaved Africans and the genocide of indigenous people. And you always got to say it, but here it is.
And on the wider point about who the United States should let in, what is your view of that? I mean, obviously America was founded in a very multicultural way.
America wasn't founded by grabbing a bunch of dudes from other countries, bringing them here, giving them free apartments and welfare. It was by people who wanted to escape religious persecution, and they started building things, not just coming here getting handouts. I mean, I've been a lot of places and I've seen a lot of people, and as soon as the truth is told and you don't like it, you just say racist.
Let's talk about the truth there, Piers. I got to jump in here. When we talk about the founding of America, it was founded by European colonizers, built on the backs of enslaved Africans and on the genocide of indigenous people. To claim that it wasn't, just free handout, it literally was. The Homestead Act, which was finally repealed in 1987, gave hundreds of millions of acres of free land to white European immigrants while denying them to the descendants of enslaved Africans. And so even to this day, the single demographic, the largest demographic on public welfare are white Americans. But there is no accountability and restitution or reparations for the enslaved Africans and their descendants who suffered genocide. And we rewrite this history. Well, we built it by our bootstraps. No, you didn't. You built it on the backs of the enslaved Africans. And to the comment that Islam is new to America, 1/3 of those Africans were Muslim who were forced into Christianity, who were beaten and murdered and raped. This is a legacy of this country.
Oh, yeah, that first guy was that Navy SEAL who said he killed bin Laden, by the way. But Qasim Rashid really handed it to him, and there's some fun sound effects that I guess he must have added in when he shared it. Let's see if Hakeem Jeffries can clean up on maybe you'll be Speaker of the House.
What was the specific objective of this meeting you had with Jared Kushner in New York?
As we've repeatedly indicated as House Democrats from the beginning of this Congress, we're committed to pushing back against the extremism that has been unleashed on the American people every day, every week, every month, year after year, until we can end this national nightmare. At the same period of time, of course, we have a responsibility to solve problems. And sometimes that means meeting with people on the other side of the aisle to figure out what the opportunities will be in order to address the things that the American people definitively want us to address. The reality that the cost of living in this country is way too high, and we've got to address that affordability crisis, which is not a hoax.
So did you accomplish anything specific during this meeting with Kushner?
No, it was just a high-level, topical conversation, particularly focused on affordability, as well as the housing bill that ultimately became law, notwithstanding the president's refusal to sign it.
Well, are you satisfied? There you go. He cleaned it right up. I think everybody's going to be fine. We've made far too big of a deal about the Hakeem Jeffries, the most powerful, high-ranking Democrat in the House of Representatives, meeting with Donald Trump's son-in-law. It's way too much of a big deal, according to Bill Boyle. I got to get him on here to defend it. Okay, finally, second to last clip. It's Volodymyr Zelensky. It's better to watch than to listen to. If you're listening on the podcast, you should see this video because he's standing in front of a bunch of tanks in front of a Ukrainian government ministry building, it looks like, in a black uniform. And this is what he has to say. You'll hear it first, I think, in Ukrainian, and then you'll hear the English translation come in. And I think it's worth it. So I am going to share it.
Putin hopes that we are tired, but we know that he is mortal. He never understood us. Now, he will not have time to. You wanted to take all our Ukraine, all our land, but instead you lost your oil refineries, your fleet, your profits, your entire generation that you sent into the meat grinder. You wanted us erased from the map. Now you are absent from the international agenda of the future civilization. For 27 years, the head of Russia has talked about greatness, while Russia is standing in lines for gasoline.
Pretty powerful, if you ask me. Okay, and finally, I've got some jokes, some comedy, some humor I like to end the clip show on with the guest host for Jimmy Kimmel Live, Jelly Roll, who I know nothing about, but here are the jokes that they gave him.
Woo, and that ain't right, y'all. I flew here from Tennessee. We only come here for the women, weed, and the weather. I'm so sweaty right now, it's like the east wing of the White House in my pants. My ballroom is an absolute disaster. Thank you, Cletones. You know what? I did a couple of jokes like that last night in case y'all didn't hear about it, and it's because I'm hosting a damn late night show. That's where you talk about the news and you make jokes. But I guess apparently because I did it, it really messed with people's heads. This was actually a headline, y'all. Jelly Roll stuns Jimmy Kimmel Live audience with multiple jabs at Trump. Didn't see this coming. I have to say, as a former felon, a drug dealer who has lost 300 pounds, has tattoos all over his face, and won 3 Grammys, this is the weirdest thing I've ever done to stun people. What a turn of events. Who would have guessed I'd get in more trouble with the president than Rosie O'Donnell? I love you, Rosie. Thanks for having my back today, baby. Some folks online were upset that I didn't treat the president with reverence and dignity. But I want to remind y'all that I go by the name Jelly Roll. I don't even treat myself with reverence and dignity. One day I looked in the mirror and said, "You, my friend, are a pastry." Frankly, I think most people were just surprised that I had any opinions at all. They see a guy that looks like me and assume the only opinion I have is whether I prefer my meth crystal or classic.
All right, Jelly Roll. Oh, it's pretty funny. He gave him good jokes about himself, and he told them happily. I liked it. That's something that a personality like Donald Trump and a lot of other men cannot do. Yeah, we should all be able to make fun of ourselves, regardless, by the way, of our gender. That's just one way to project confidence, I think, is what I try to teach my girls, who are doing great, 18 and 21. They are off and they are sailing. I am really loving hearing from and watching them. All right. I don't know how I slipped in a plug for my girls, but now it's time to get to my conversation with Gil Duran, everybody. Gil is a highly respected journalist, highly coveted. Everybody wants to talk to him, so I was very happy that he sat down with me. Shows, I think, the power of the show and the credibility of our audience. So please reach out to him. Get his new book. It's called The Nerd Reich, Silicon Valley, Fascism, and the War on Democracy. And he is a real interesting guy. This is a very, very important story. I didn't do the best job at explaining, I think, some of the background of the book, because he's done so many interviews, and I know many of you are familiar with him, but you got to understand who and what he's talking about. So watch other interviews, get the book. And I also wanted to learn a little bit about Gil, because I didn't know that much about him and hadn't seen him talk too much about himself. I'm glad I did, because these first few minutes are pretty interesting to me about Gil and the work that he's doing and why he does it. Go get the book. Go follow and support him on Blue Sky and his website, The Nerd Reich, and on YouTube, and I'll put all those links in the show notes. Let's do it right now with Gil Duran. I am now getting to talk to the guy that everybody wants to talk to. His new book is out, this week? Congratulations. Last week, the 20th, I think it was. The Nerd Reich. Gil Duran joining me for the second time. A hot commodity, this guy. Welcome and thank you, and congrats on the heat. Everybody wants to talk to you about this book.
Thanks. This is what I do all day now, apparently.
Yeah. It's super important. I mean, you were about to go in a different direction at one point not too long ago in your career, but you basically got a hold of this story and you couldn't look the other way. Before we get started, as people are coming in here, you've had a pretty interesting career. You worked in politics, in Congress, for a senator. You're from California. After that, I guess you went into the news business, into journalism, and worked for some pretty big outlets. And then there was a transition potentially about to happen. Gil, tell us a little bit about your background. You're a California political expert, I think it's fair to say.
Well, I started as a journalist, and that was like when I was in the 5th grade, I won something called the My Mom's the Best contest for Mother's Day. You had to write a little essay about why your mom's the best. And I won first prize, which was $25 for a brunch for your mother on Mother's Day, and a microwave, which this is 1987, so it's like a brand new piece of technology.
Why was your mom, in fact, the best, or was your essay the best and your mom was average?
Well, according to me, both were true. And it was just, I think it was touching because in the piece I wrote, you could tell I was talking about being poor, even though I didn't know. So I was like, even when she doesn't have money for gas, she still takes us to the park and buys us costumes for Halloween. So it's kind of unintentionally ratting out our relative poverty. But at the end I said, but even if it weren't for all these things she does, she would still be the best because I love her and she loves me too. So it was and I only wrote it because my grandfather made me write it. I'd been putting it off for, like usual, I needed somebody to make me sit down and write the dang thing. And actually memory came back to me while writing a book, because you got to keep your butt in the chair for hours and hours a day. And I would think of my grandfather saying, sit down, now write it, because he gave me several good days to write it of my own accord. So that's where my interest started. And I ended up on the paper in middle school, which was just a bunch of pages stapled together, and in high school. And I became a journalist after college, after working on the college paper. But then the technology thing hit and the revenue was gone and paper started laying off. And I ended up for 2 years doing blue collar jobs. I was a wildland firefighter in Oregon. I cooked in kitchens. I was a property manager. I worked in warehouses. And then a friend introduced me to Jerry Brown, and I ended up going into politics for 17 years before returning to journalism in 2018.
Wow.
So that's kind of my trajectory there. So I learned a lot. Politics was my grad school, and I learned how all that works, and wore a suit for over a decade, having never worn a suit before that. And that's kind of been my trajectory.
What can you because you've been doing a lot of great interviews for the book, and we're going to talk about the book and why everybody's here to hear about the subject matter and the tech billionaires, network state, the Nerd Reich as it's called, and all of the rest of them and how it's connected. It's so important, and your work is really getting a lot of light right now, and that's awesome for several reasons. But I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily know you, and while you might not want to really talk about yourself so much because it's the work, I do think that in this new independent media world, we do need to be able to establish credibility, and that is the currency. Your reputation is currency. And I think that it's not that hard to look at the Nerd Reich, your book, your work, and say, hey, maybe this is your view based on your reporting. You're connecting a lot of dots here that maybe, you've created a narrative that doesn't, but I think it's important when I look at your background and your reputation and what you've done that lends itself to that credibility with the work you're doing. That's what my effort is. So people watching, you obviously can understand that. But what did you do in politics for 10 years? Like, what was your job? What was any of the big issues that you were close to either winning, succeeding with, or losing, being?
Sure. I was mostly a press secretary, communications director, putting my journalism background to use as a spokesman, someone who wrote press releases, who dealt with media relations. And I worked for Jerry Brown when he was the mayor of Oakland, and then he became the attorney general. And I went to work for the mayor of LA when Antonio Villaraigosa got elected, because I really wanted to work for the first Latino mayor of LA in a lot of years. And after that, Obama got elected, and I wanted to go to Washington and find a way into the Obama administration. But I tried to get a 6-month stint. There was a job that was a 6-month job in Senator Feinstein's office, and she ended up tricking me into staying for 2 years, which I never really expected to do. And at the time, Feinstein was the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee. And while there, she launched this investigation into CIA torture tactics during the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which was very meaningful and very hard-fought reforms there. I had started, I wasn't really into politics directly before, but my first real taste of politics was protesting against the Iraq war, which I felt was very unjust and was a big mistake.
Me too.
At a time when 85% of people were supporting this, I thought everyone's lost their minds.
Me too. And I was in New York on 9/11. So I think those of us who, were in New York and basically lived through that terrorist attack had more credibility in protesting against that war. We didn't want that. I was in the streets too, and very much against that war, obviously. So that's fascinating. And the Senator Feinstein, what she did in investigating torture and how she just was a bulldog on that, never let it go. There's a movie made about that, as a matter of fact, and it's really very important. So pretty cool that you were a part of that very important moment in history, I think.
Yeah. Then I came back to California, worked for Jerry Brown, who had now become governor. And our big signature move there were two. One was a massive prison reform that had never been tried or done before. We basically reduced the prison population by 30,000 people because the data shows that prisons are crime schools and you have to find a way to deal with crime and poverty in a completely different way. And the other was we passed a tax on the wealthiest people, on a small temporary sales tax, in order to fix a $27.7 billion budget deficit and create a multi-billion-dollar surplus over many, many years. So it was this sort of California comeback narrative, and I was there for a lot of that. And then I worked for a short period of time for this largely unknown politician named Kamala Harris, who was Attorney General of California at the time and would later come to the attention of the nation and the world. And that was sort of my trajectory in politics.
How close did you work with her?
I was her communications director for 5 months.
What would you say publicly about her? Character?
Oh, people can Google my name and her name and they can deduce their own conclusions there. I did not have a good time. I was a critic of Kamala Harris. I wish she had won the presidency, believe me, because this is horrible, but I always had my doubts and trepidation. So I'm somebody who, despite the fact that I worked in Democratic establishment politics, as a journalist, I've been very critical. Basically, I just speak my mind, what I think, what I see, what I say. I praise people when it's merited. I criticize people when it's merited. And that's been sort of my value proposition since returning to journalism. I'm somebody who has an insider's knowledge, but an outsider's attitude. And I'm not just guessing at things. A lot of political journalists are kind of guessing. They've never been inside. I can see what the talking points are really saying. I can see what they're trying to avoid. I can see what the strategy is, what they're trying to get people to say about what they're doing. And so I try to debunk and clarify for my readers what's really going on there behind the scenes. So
you're very good at it, and everybody should be subscribing to your work. It's clearly getting a lot of attention. You've created a massive following, which I think is great because as you said, I think you should promote it. I'm going to do it for you. He's got an insider's knowledge and an outsider's, what was it?
Attitude.
I wrote it down. I ruined it already. Insider's knowledge, outsider's attitude. Gil Duran, the new book is very important because it delves into an industry that is now the most arguably the most influential and powerful in the country. I think that's where I wanted to start with you, because we've known for a long time the power of special interests, whether it be the oil and gas, energy, whether it be pharmaceutical or healthcare or any other lobby, and how much money they donate to campaigns. But reading your book and your reporting is it's the crypto AI industries that are donating to more campaigns, both Republicans and Democrats, than any other industry. Is that right?
Currently, crypto and AI are becoming the biggest players, especially crypto, in the American political system via their massive spending, hundreds of millions of dollars on hand for the midterms alone.
I love the way that you describe and disparage crypto. Please do it here.
Crypto, I don't think it's fair to call it an industry. It's a cartel. Imagine if the drug dealers all decided they're going to start pouring money into campaigns, and anybody who votes against drugs is going to get hammered with hundreds of millions of dollars in illicit profits from these things. Now, I think we like drugs more than crypto. Drugs are more useful than crypto. What is crypto for? Can anyone say? Mostly it's been useful for crime, terrorism, human trafficking, gambling, scamming. And now we see that it's been introduced to a new purpose, which is as a weapon of mass corruption in American politics. It went from being a zero player in politics to now being, boom, the largest player in American politics in terms of money being poured into campaigns. Nothing grows that fast except for cancer. And that's what crypto is, a cancer in the heart of American democracy. And unfortunately now, the AI industry is doing the exact same thing. They're taking the crypto playbook and they're just going to flood money into politics. And they're basically holding a gun to the head of American democracy here. Anybody who votes against them basically is going to get hammered with tens of millions or more dollars to take them down. They did it to Katie Porter, spending $10 million to kill her Senate campaign, which she probably was going to lose anyway to Adam Schiff, but they just wanted to scare people and show them this is what we'll do to you. They did it to Sherrod Brown. And then they also were paying to put pro-crypto Democrats in office. They spent $10 million to get Ruben Gallego in there. And so, yeah, they're just basically saying we're going to buy the entire system in order to break it. Silicon Valley, which for a long time seemed aloof about electoral politics, wasn't really involved maybe 15 years ago when I was working in government, has realized that basically power and influence are for sale.
Yeah.
And while that's always been the case, some people would argue that we've always been a bit of an oligarchy because the rich do get their way in the halls of power. What they're doing is just like having completely no shame and launching this obscene strategy to buy the entire system in front of our very eyes and make it work for them. And I think that's going to count against them because people have a very low opinion of billionaires right now. They see what they're doing. They have way too much power. But I would encourage people to check out Tech Influence Watch. It's a website where Molly White is tracking this spending in a way that no one else really is. And it's important to realize that's happening, that they are trying to basically buy our democracy in order to break it. And it's happening out in the open, and it's indisputable.
It's indisputable. It's out of the open. You have been amongst just a handful of people that have been reporting on this. You have been very, I think, generous in giving credit to others who've been writing about this for a long time as well. In my first conversation with you, and of course in your book and your writing. But basically, everything is at stake here, and there is a very influential campaign that's been very effective, and they haven't hidden what they believe and what they want to do. It's happening out in the wide, transparent open, but so much of media is not paying attention to it, not covering it. One reason you say is because it's too weird to believe. Gil, how weird are the things that these tech billionaires who are so influential in politics and government, not only in the U.S., but in other countries now as well, what is it that they believe?
Well, I think it was weird before, but now I think it seems to a lot of people like reality, right? It seems like reality. Yeah. They basically believe that democracy is an outdated software system and it needs to be upgraded with a new system in which tech billionaires essentially have all the power. Curtis Yarvin, this sort of drug-addled fascist philosopher who's been funded by Peter Thiel for many years, basically calls for a dictatorship or a monarchy says that would be better, that, American democracy was a mistake. We should have lost the American Revolution. We should still be a monarchy, which is ridiculous for several reasons, including that what's going on with the monarchy in England. It's barely even, there's no power there, right?
Curtis Yarvin is a radically weird, not so well respected intelligence guy, but he's convincing to many. There's been people throughout history like him that have all kinds of wacky beliefs, but somehow he has convinced some of the richest assholes in the world to subscribe to his fucking nonsensical bullshit that when put up against a smart person falls away, and he gets embarrassed, as we've seen just a couple of times that he's kind of exposed himself. Pick it up there. Am I right about that?
Yeah, if you're as dumb as a billionaire in Silicon Valley, then Curtis Yarvin seems like a genius to you. And so basically he's sort of a court jester. He says out loud the things they want to hear that maybe they say in private. He flatters them. Right? Who should be in charge? All the billionaires. Now, please, who are my friends and who are funding my company. And so, unfortunately, these crazy ideas of Yarvin, the idea of purging the federal government, he wrote a long time ago that a future president acting as an authoritarian should just purge the federal government. And if the courts try to stop him, just keep going. And none other than J.D. Vance ends up quoting these same ideas in 2021. In my book, I have an entire chapter on Vance called The Unicorn. He's like this Silicon Valley investment that Peter Thiel made a long time ago. And at every step of Vance's career, Peter Thiel has been there with funding, with support, promoting him, getting him basically from being an obscure Yale law student all the way into the White House in a very short period of time. And in 2021, Vance was quoting the ideas of Yarvin in a podcast. And he said that he thought Trump was going to get reelected in 2024, which was a crazy thing to say at the time. Most people did not see Trump coming back in 2021. And he said when Trump did get elected, he should purge the federal government. He should denazify or debothify, like during the Iraq War,
right.
Purge the government of any loyalists to democracy, apparently. And if the courts tried to stop Trump, Vance said, he should challenge the justices to make him. What are you going to do about it? And these are some deeply anti-American, radical, extremist ideas. And not only did Trump get reelected, but he got back to the White House with J.D. Vance by his side. And as far as I know, no journalist has ever asked J.D. Vance about his embrace of these extremist ideas. Or how does he feel that Curtis Yarvin's idea, which J.D. Vance had recommended in 2021, got carried out through Doge and was a complete disaster? There's just this complete cloak of invisibility these guys have where he's literally the vice president, a heartbeat away from the presidency, and no one's asking about this.
There are so many other crazy ideas. Again, if Kristen Welker talked about it on Meet the Press, or Tom Yames, I don't know, the nightly news guy on CBS, ABC, everything. If they talked about it or gave attention to it, people would find it so bizarre that anyone believes it. But many of these tech billionaires, obviously Peter Thiel, who you write and talk a lot about, believes all kinds of things. These things were written in a book. And the book should have never been popular. But again, Peter Thiel, it appeals to him. So whether it's Curtis Yarvin's crazy ideas or these other authors' book and these crazy ideas, Peter Thiel is living them out. You're reporting on it. And I think it's part of why everybody's so interested in what you're saying and writing about, because they're like, holy shit, how come everybody isn't talking about this? You can easily connect the dots. Peter Thiel is living out this book. Talk to us about the book, the origins, and obviously how bizarre the whole thing is. And again, why isn't anybody talking about it in the mainstream corporate media, which is not something I usually say. You can look and see, but they're not nearly enough.
In 1997, there was a book published called The Sovereign Individual, and its thesis was pretty simple, that in the 21st century, technology would overthrow democratic nations like the United States, which would cease to exist, which would devolve into chaos and violence and poverty. And the two technologies it named were something called cybercurrency, a new kind of digital money that would arise to undermine government authority and allow wealthy people to exfiltrate their money from democratic government systems. And the other was advanced automation, this new technology that would basically kill most jobs, leading to economic decline and chaos and violence as people were no longer able to find work and instead turned to crime and fighting each other for food and resources. And the book recommended that certain savvy individuals who invested wisely and prepared for this apocalyptic future, could profit from the situation and should obtain multiple passports and travel around the world to all the different countries that would now cater to these so-called sovereign individuals, these cognitive elites who would now be this major new force in the world. And it sounded like a very kooky book back in 1997, a conspiratorial, strange tome, mostly rehashing ideas from science fiction and other futurist literature. Publishers Weekly dismissed it as an apocalyptic exercise that is unconvincing, but the book had such a profound effect on Peter Thiel that he has credited it with being part of the inspiration for PayPal, which he has described as an effort to get ahead of this new digital currency that was coming. And that's not exactly what PayPal became. It became a digital payments system, but that did provide the basis for Thiel's fortune, and he turned those millions into billions, and since then has been spreading this gospel of this book, The Sovereign Individual, around and helping to basically radicalize a little cult of other billionaires and tech people into this idea that they are the chosen ones who will help to hasten this future. And what do you have now? You have crypto, and Peter Thiel and his cronies played a big role in the rise of crypto, which probably would have disappeared in all the scams and collapses that happened without tons of billions and billions of dollars in venture capital investment. And we have AI. The same guy's investing in that. And what has the narrative been out of the AI companies? It's going to kill all your jobs and possibly wipe humanity off the face of the planet unless you give us trillions and trillions of dollars to align it properly, whatever the hell that means. And they're also promising it'll create this sort of godlike new force that will unleash this big new human era. So you see this weird idea becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, as most prophecies are. But I think people don't realize that that's the idea here. The idea, and this also comes from Yarvin, but as well as Balaji Srinivasan, another Thiel protege, is that the United States of America does not survive the 21st century, and that is a good thing. It's a thing that should be hastened and brought about using money and technology. And I would add a third technology besides crypto and AI is Donald Trump, who is a technology for destroying American democracy. And what do venture capitalists do? They invest in disruption. They invest in projects that will return even more money, 10x, 100x, what they put in. And Donald Trump is a bet that they're making against American democracy. That helps explain this weird alignment. They have cornered AI, crypto, in surveillance, defense technology, and government power all at the same time.
They also have noticed that Donald Trump does not look long for the future of power and started hedging their bets. Is that right?
A little bit. I don't know. The jury's out. What are they going to do about the midterms? Is Trump going to do the thing? Is he going to try to interfere and block Democrats from winning back power when the polls clearly show he's dead and the Republican Party right now is dead?
Yeah.
It's not clear. They're still toying around with that idea. And I'll tell you this. If Donald Trump declared that we were no longer a democracy, there'd be a lot of applause from billionaires in Silicon Valley and then a lot of silence from the others who are just going to go along with it, even if they really don't like it very much. Of what use are billionaires to anyone?
It should be illegal. They should be eaten. I said it on CNN. Billionaires should be eaten. They should be eaten. But and I don't think they're long for this world either. I think that their future looks bleak as well. I mean, like the fact that people know where Peter Thiel lives in Argentina now and they're outside protesting in Grim Reaper costumes and shit. Who wants that life?
Gandalf costumes.
Forgive
They're
me.
Turning his Lord of the Rings fetish against him. I thought it was so beautiful.
Right.
All these Gandalfs protesting.
Palantir is his, and that was named from the Lord of the Rings character, right? But the other part that I found interesting in reading your book is that a lot of the people that get close to Thiel and others have to also believe or pretend to believe, and they're just as crazy as Scientology or any other fucking weird philosophy, or at least anything that's anti-dramatic, democratic, and sounds like real fascistic. They have to believe that stuff too. Like to get close to them, you have to also be a fucking wacko?
Peter Thiel extols the idea of cults. That's why I refer to this as a cult of Silicon Valley billionaires who believe technology will make democracy obsolete. And so what they're able to do in Silicon Valley, you have a handful of elites with a tremendous amount of money. and thousands of people who want access to that money, who want to be inside of that money, who want to also become millionaires or billionaires. And so that gives these venture capitalists the power to create a culture in which, in order to fit in, you have to agree to certain things. You have to believe in certain things.
Yeah.
And what we've seen over the past several years is this right-wing trend among the young wannabes in Silicon Valley who now know they have to question democracy and know Curtis Yarvin and be for this idea of maximum technological acceleration no matter the cost. And the reason that Thiel likes cults is he said they can create organizations of total dedication. It matters more than your family. It matters more than your social life. It becomes the purpose of your life. And that's the way to create a company. And that's the way to create a movement. And so, yeah, I do think they've been able to red pill some people into this idea. I don't know that it'll last, though. Nothing, Machiavelli said, when you got to pay people, you can't depend on their loyalty, really, right? So it's a question of whether that's real or whether it's, when people went to see Peter Thiel speak about the Antichrist in San Francisco, he gave a 4-part series on the Antichrist. He's become very obsessed with the Antichrist lately as he reaches the apex of power and influence. And as his protege is one heartbeat away from the presidency. And there was a line of people outside, and reporters talked to the people, and almost no one was there because they cared what Peter Thiel thought about the Antichrist. They wanted to be in the room with an investor with billions of dollars, and were hoping to pitch him on their ideas. So, as the Beatles said, can't buy you love, right? But don't tell the billionaires. They think that the applause is real and the interest is genuine. It's not. It's all about your money, bro.
I feel like you're the person, Gil, who has connected the idea of fascism to these guys. I haven't heard as many other fascism experts talk about this, but you have read all of them and studied their work, Jason Stanley, Tim Snyder, and the rest. And is it you, or are they also, or others using this kind of tech fascism terminology? Because explain what you mean and what they believe and why you're using that term.
Well, Jason Stanley has definitely described what Trump is doing as fascism. And on the most basic level, these Silicon Valley guys are fascists because they are partnering up with a fascist movement. Even if some of them don't agree with all of it, they decided to put their money behind it. If you fund fascism, you're a fascist. If you support a fascist regime, you're a fascist. There's two kinds of fascists, enthusiastic ones and unenthusiastic ones. So either way you go, you're a fascist. So that's one level. But if you look at what fascism is, there's a few different definitions. So I looked for what's the overlap. Stanley has 10 points of what fascism is. Umberto Eco had, I think, like 24, maybe 14. I forget the numbers here. But then others have other ways some people have 3 points of what fascism is. Mussolini had a definition. But fascism is typically a cult of grievance and self-victimization that promises a return to some mythical greatness through the purging of hated and demonized enemies, which is aided and abetted by a propaganda that's surreal and extreme in its quality and tends to focus on things like law and order and gender and sexuality. And the goal is to impose a permanent hierarchy on the world in which it will be men over women, whites over non-whites, straights over LGBT people, the rich over the poor, the Christian over the non-Christian, and on and on and on. Everything's a hierarchy. That hierarchy is the moral order of the world and the universe. And the other thing that fascism does, and this was sort of what Mussolini did, it tends to bundle all of the institutions of power and influence into one monopoly of power. So the corporate merges with the state, merges with religion, merges with the media, which becomes a propaganda organ. And so there's no way to really question or oppose it. All countervailing powers, people who might speak against it, might run for election, are erased and suppressed so that only the leader is the power, is the law. And that's what we see happening. And to me, what the difference of tech fascism is, instead of promising a return to the mythical past, they promise an acceleration into a mythical future of godlike powers and transhuman abilities and superabundance brought to us by artificial intelligence and crypto. So they have this delusional fantasy that they're about to blast off into this multiplanetary new era. And none of this is backed by science, by the way. It's very much a religious idea. In addition, they're bundling together the powers of AI and crypto and surveillance and defense technology with the power of government. and just it's all becoming one. And that's the danger, because we've never seen a group as rich and powerful as this one attempt to do what they're doing right now. There's no excuse for any of these Silicon Valley billionaires, many of whom benefited greatly from public investments that made their entire wealth possible, betraying our government and betraying our system and betraying our freedom in the way that they are very openly and abjectly doing today.
The book is out. Everybody should go get the book. Where else can people find your work on Substack? Where are you posting social media wise regularly? And just speak to what your personal concerns are. I saw that you're on YouTube and had some concern that you're going to get knocked off YouTube. When people hear you talking, first, they get sick to their stomach, according to the live comments. But second, they might be concerned. You have this effect. Your reporting has this effect. I don't think it's you, Gil. Don't take it personally, but you're reporting important reporting and telling the story the way you're telling it, I think really scares people, because they're waking up to what is potentially happening and could happen. But what is the deal with potentially censoring you, Gil Duran, at YouTube or anywhere else, or me for having you on, or anybody else for platforming your work that is reporting on the kings of all assholery?
Well, YouTube was going to delete my channel on Saturday, but they backed off of that after I launched a public campaign to make people aware of what was happening. Basically, someone was paying someone to file multiple daily complaints, fake copyright strikes they're called, against my channel. It's a well-known tactic. For like $5,000, you can get this done. And generally, if you have a small account, YouTube will just delete your channel and ignore you. You're just done. So I made a big drama out of it, and that seemed to work. There were people at YouTube directly apparently very anxious about the media calls they were getting. But I've also been banned from X for tweeting about fascism. This happened in April. I was also one of the people banned when Musk first took over Twitter. And so I'm off of there permanently, which is kind of actually a relief. X sucks. Whenever I look at it, I'm like, what are those crazy people doing over there? But you can find me on Blue Sky. And you can find me on, I've gained like 10,000 Instagram followers in the past week because of the book and because of Democracy Now! And so I'm getting a little more active on Instagram as well. But Blue Sky, Mastodon, and most importantly at thenerdreich.com. That's my newsletter. That's where I post my thoughts first generally. And that's where we can keep in touch, hopefully, even if I get deplatformed everywhere.
Lastly, a call to arms. I know you offer a way forward, and your thoughts.
We can have billionaires or we can have democracy. We cannot have both. And it's important to remember, I know this is scary stuff, and it's a scary time. I feel it too. But there are a lot more of us than there are of them. And if we fight, we're going to win. And it's important to let these people know that we see what they're doing and that there are going to be severe consequences later for everything that happened right now. We're going to peel it all back, and we're going to make sure that the billionaire class never has a chance to do this kind of thing again. So it's time to get excited. It's time to get angry. It's time to not be scared. You know, in a democracy, the people should not be afraid of the billionaires. The billionaires should be afraid of the people. And we all have a moral responsibility to make sure that's the case right now.
I'm your huckleberry. Love it, Gil. Gil Duran, everybody, the Nerd Reich. Get the book, subscribe, follow him on all the platforms. Apparently he's an Instagram model now too. Is that Gil Duran on Instagram?
Yep.
All right, man. It's so great to talk to you again. Keep up the great work. Everybody wants to talk to you, so I appreciate you sitting down with me today. Thank you so much.
Thanks for taking an interest early.
Always. And thanks everybody for watching live. Subscribe at Stand Up with Pete here on Substack and everywhere else. I do this every day. I talk to the smartest people in the world, and Gil certainly has become one of them in my mind. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye. Well, folks, that's all I've got for you. Gil Duran on today's show. I am very happy to have you listen to it, seen it, watch it, subscribe on YouTube, read a rating review on Spotify and Apple. And thank you so much for your support. Get a paid subscription on Patreon or Substack. All the links in the show notes to this, usually wherever I post it. You can also send me money on Venmo if you're still watching or listening here at the end. I am very, very grateful, and I can't do it without you. We've created an amazing community. You can join us anytime. All kinds of hundreds of people chiming in on the Discord platform, joining us on our Thursday night hangouts at 8 p.m. East. I will be there, and you can too. Be the change you want to see in the world. Bye. John Carroll writes and performs the music, takes us out on the podcast every day, but not on YouTube because that would get me copyright. We're going to try to get that taken care of. Okay. Bye-bye.
When the tyrants taunt you and the sirens teach you, better stand up. Stand up. Let the brave meet the challenge. Let the meek weak flee. boy, you better stand up. Stand up. When you're tired of begging, saying pretty please, that's the time you gotta finally get up off of your knees. When you can't see the forest for the burning trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. We got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. This is the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change would begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest hour. Stand up. People got the power. Stand up. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Stand up.